Hey everybody, Andy Kvernen here with another Cornerstone Connection Daily Devotional. You know, it's no secret if you know me at all that over the last couple of years I've been on a journey to keep better health habits. And so I lost a bunch of weight and I've gained some back, and it's a struggle, and I don't mean to make a big deal out of it, except to say that I know that for me I have to be careful not to slip into habits that are destructive rather than constructive, that take away from my health rather than build into it. And that's always a struggle. It's so easy to revert. And I think that's been true ever since the fall of mankind. When God said to Adam and Eve, I want you to fill the earth and subdue it, they rejected God's command. They rejected God's provision in the Garden of Eden, and instead they ate of the fruit, and all of a sudden the ground became cursed, and they became self-protectionists. They covered themselves with fig leaves, and they were missing God's ideal. And we've seen this narrative unfold over and over, where God says something and humankind does something to revert back into something that's antagonistic to what God has called them to. And of course we see that as Genesis unfolds. In Genesis chapter 6, the people have largely rejected God, save for one man and his family, Noah. And so God says, I'm going to wipe out the earth. I regret the creation that I've made. I regret creating these people, except for Noah. And so I'm going to obliterate the people. I'm going to send a flood. I'm going to correct this, and I'm going to save Noah so that my plans can continue to unfold. And so he does that. And Noah builds the ark, and the animal kingdom is saved on the ark, and so is the human race. And here we go. And so there's this backsliding in the human race, but then there's a correction. But then just a few chapters later, the people still would have had the flood fresh in their history, in their minds. They knew what rejecting God could do and what it could bring. And yet here the people are again, backsliding. And we get to Genesis chapter 11, where with this mandate to fill the earth and subdue it still fresh in our minds, the people reject God once again. Look at this. In verse 3, chapter 11, it says, the people, they said to each other, come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly. And they used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth. What they're doing here is they're building a temple, a pagan temple, in essence saying we're rejecting God's will and we're rejecting God's mandate to fill the earth and subdue it. Instead, we're going to stay where it's comfortable for us, where we can manage our own situation. We're not doing what God has said. Well, how does that sit with God? Let's keep reading. It says, but the Lord came down to see the city and the tower people were building. The Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. God says, if you're not going to do what I ask you to do, guess what? I'm going to make it hard for you. I'm going to confuse you. I'm going to carry out my will. I'm going to accomplish my purposes either with you or without you. And so verse 8 says, so the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Now, it's fascinating to me that the people during the time where the Tower of Babel was built, they had a choice. They could follow God or reject Him. They chose to reject Him, and yet God still accomplished His purpose. What was the cost? Well, they missed out on what God was doing. They missed out on God's blessing. You flip over one more chapter, and you get to a man who is called to leave the place where he was comfortable and to do something that God had called him to do for the sake of God's agenda on the earth. And here it's a different story. Listen to this. Starting in Genesis 12, verse 1, it says, the Lord had said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I'll make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I'll make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So Abraham went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. What's the difference between Abram, and the people during the time of the Tower of Babel? Abraham did as the Lord commanded him. And what was the result? Well, Abraham got to experience God's blessing. Friends, we're all prone to backslide, to do that which we know we ought not do. We're prone to go back to the things that are comfortable, like the people during the time of the Tower of Babel. But in faith, Abraham had faith, right? In faith, we can trust that what God asks us to do is going to be the best thing because God provides, and in that we'll be blessed. And so today, maybe you're prone to backslide. Maybe you're prone to do something that you know you ought not. Maybe you're prone not to do something you know you should, you know you could. One of these life-giving resources that God has made available to you, whether it's showing up in community, whether it's reading His Word, whether it's spending time in prayer, whether it's being proactive in your relationships to demonstrate the love of Jesus. God is calling you to something, but it's easy to slip back into what's comfortable. Today, would you be like Abram? Would you take that step of faith? Would you do as the Lord commands you to do? Would you go where the Lord tells you? Here's what I'm confident, friends. If you do that, it's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be cut and dried, but you're going to be blessed. You're going to experience the Lord's favor. And that's what I want for you today on the Cornerstone Connection. We'll see you again next time.